Welcome to Season 5 of the Funding Love Adoption Podcast with Mal and Kate. We are two adoptive moms that seek to love, support, and elevate all corners of the adoption triad through honest conversation. This season, we are continuing through our series of walking through the adoption journey step by step by sharing stories, tips, and advice we have learned along the way. So pull up a chair and sip your favorite beverage because everyone has a seat at our table. We are Funding Love, the podcast. Hi, Funding Love family. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the Funding Love podcast. But before we get started, I just wanted to take a moment to remind you and personally invite you to the 3rd annual fundraising gala, A Night of Dreams. Let's just say that this year's event is going to be, well, the greatest show. It is going to have a silent and live auction, full-plated dinner, amazing programming, and a VIP cocktail hour for our VIP guests. It's going to take place on April 25th at the Four Seasons Resort Orlando, and we hope to see you there. For more information, visit our website at fundinglove.com/Night of Dreams. Now let's get back to the show. Hello, and welcome back to the Funding Love Adoption Podcast. Here we are with bonus episode number 2, and Kate and I have an amazing guest that we are excited to welcome with us today. Her name is Janelle Basham, and she is the Executive Director of BraveLove, which is a nonprofit that Caitlin and I absolutely adore. Mm-hmm. They are transforming the narrative of adoption by honoring birth mothers and fostering understanding through education, support, and storytelling, which is what Caitlin and I absolutely love about BraveLove.
Oh
Their
gosh,
amazing storytelling abilities.
We'll talk about that because that's so good.
Yes. So welcome, Janelle. We're going to learn more and more about you throughout the episode, but we are so grateful that you joined us today.
Oh, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm super excited to be a part of this conversation today.
Yeah, this is awesome. So we gave a little bit of an intro of who you are and a little intro of BraveLove. And for those who are listening or tuning in who know BraveLove, you're going to love this conversation. And if you don't know BraveLove, I'm glad you're here because you need to know BraveLove. So, but we gave a little intro of who you are as well. But tell our listeners, who is Janelle? Where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
Wow. This could be a super long podcast if you want.
Yeah, go for it. We're here.
Yeah. So who is Janelle? Wow. So I currently live in Lynchburg, Virginia with my husband. We have 2 children. Carson is the oldest, and then Emma. And then I placed a daughter for adoption, and she lives about 2 hours away. And she's also made me a grandmother. So I wear many hats. I have lots of labels. I'm an empty nester, and I am loving life. So that's just me in a really quick nutshell.
Yeah. So tell us, because we've said it, you're a birth mom of 30 years. Yeah.
That's so crazy. I do not feel old enough to be able to do that.
Those watching on YouTube will see that you should not. You look.
Thank you.
You don't. Yeah, you don't look like a grandma. You're a cool grandma.
Yeah. Thank you.
But tell us about your journey to choosing adoption with your oldest daughter.
Yeah. It's really interesting to be able to look back over my life now with hindsight. Things happen in life, and you're like, oh, that's interesting, that's unique. But now looking back, I could see the little nuggets. And when I was very young, I grew up in South Jersey. So that's a unique thing about me. I'm a Jersey girl completely. Someone once asked me when I was younger, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I was like, Italian. I was the only non-Italian in my neighborhood. It was so sad. But my first experience with adoption was sitting on the front porch with my grandmother and seeing my neighbors pull up. And it was a younger couple. And all of a sudden they had this baby boy. And I was like, where did he come from, Nana? And so she explained to me that he was being welcomed into their family through adoption. So at a very, very young age, that was the first impression I got of this family welcoming. They had balloons and relatives coming over to welcome him into their lives. And I was like, wow, that's a really neat experience. And then probably went and climbed a tree or something. Who knows what? But through my life, the experiences that I had been exposed to, I'm just kind of blown away. And in those moments, it was kind of like, okay, why am I having these experiences? There was a family in our church who was dealing with infertility, and the wife was amazing, is amazing, and was very open with the church about the struggles with trying to get pregnant and then going through the adoption process. And they were able to adopt. And I was their babysitter. And one night I can remember holding this newborn and rocking that baby to sleep and thinking, somewhere in the world, there is a woman who would do
Mm.
anything to switch places with me. And I was like 15 or 16 years old. And to be able to look back and be like, why was I even open to that idea? What was God preparing me for?
Mm.
And within 2 years, I was facing my own unplanned pregnancy. And so it was, my journey to adoption was the nuggets that had been laid out,
Mhm.
but then also coming to a place of, okay, I'm navigating my own pregnancy at 16, 17 years old and realizing like, I'm not ready for this. And she deserves the absolute world. And right now, I can't give it to her. So coming to that place was so hard, and being able to talk about it like it's
Yeah.
just some story now is unbelievable. It was the hardest decision I've ever made in my life. Like, even choosing a partner in life, my husband, like, this decision was the hardest,
Mm.
hopefully, thing that I'll ever have had to go through.
Mm. Yeah, and you think of making that decision at 17, like the
Mhm.
hardest decision at 17, and you're like, what do 17-year-olds know? You know what I mean? Like, if you think
Right.
of, like, that is
Mhm.
kind of like an odd
Yeah.
comparison, the hardest decision at 17. Now,
Yeah.
your story of that, did you feel supported on that front end when you were making that decision?
Yeah, so I feel like my story is unique because I had a lot of support.
Okay.
There was a lot of shame, but there was a lot of support, and my support system, was very small, and so when I shared with my family, that I was pregnant, they became like, that was it, and I was a social butterfly at that stage of life, but that would have been in 1993, 1994, where we didn't have access to internet and no cell phones, so my world was very small.
Mm.
So my support system really became my family, and from the very beginning of disclosing to them that I was pregnant, I knew that adoption was something that I wanted to explore, and so it was very much like, "Okay, well, we're gonna support Janelle in whatever decision she makes, and we're gonna have to educate ourselves on what adoption really looks like." One of the best things that happened to me was my first, OBGYN appointment. I was terrified, like, that was
Yeah.
my first experience, like, ever
Yeah.
going to an OBGYN, and I shared with her what my plans were, and my story is unique where I also chose to move to a maternity home during my
Yeah.
Oh,
pregnancy,
wow. Okay.
and so oh, yeah, I'm telling you, this podcast could be, like, hours long. Um, but sharing with that medical professional, that doctor, and saying, "Okay, this is what my plan is, this is what I'm hoping to do," and she laid the groundwork from a professional standpoint and said, "I think that's incredible. I think
Mm.
that's so brave. I think that's so loving." And, that just kinda confirmed with me, like, to find those people that are gonna support me in my decision. And so building those people and pushing away the people that weren't supporting me to kind of protect myself, my story, my future, and then ultimately to protect the child that I was carrying.
Mm.
Mhm.
Mm. Yeah, and it's because you and I, connected last week, and you told me a
Mhm,
little bit of your story, and I think it's kind of cool, and we'll get there, but how your experience in the maternity home became your professional experience as well
mhm.
once you graduated college, and, but after that, you met your husband shortly after, right, when you were in college,
I
and then
did.
yeah,
I did.
and then
Yeah, he was one of the first guys that, like, I talked to after having a baby, like,
yeah.
what in the
Hey,
world?
that means you
What in
got
the
a good
world?
one. That means you got a good one. Yeah,
I do. I
yeah,
definitely do. Yes, for sure. So I, it was really hard to figure out after having a child at 17 years old, you don't feel like a teenager. You don't
right.
really fit in with your normal peers.
Mhm.
And so I went away to college. Let's see. So I delivered the end of February and was at school in August. And,
Mm.
I didn't walk around with a t-shirt on that said, I'm a birth mom. I placed a child for adoption. I just tried to pretend like everything was normal in my life,
Mm.
whatever
Yeah.
normal is.
Mhm.
And, really just kept it to myself because I knew that there would be backlash and I experienced that. And I knew that there would be people that would be curious and have lots of questions. Um, so I was very mindful of what I shared and who I shared with. But yes, one of the first guys that I interacted with on campus was this really cute Southern gentleman. Again, I'm from South Jersey.
Yeah.
And met this guy from Greenville, South Carolina that I could barely understand, but, yeah, we hit it off. Yep. Mhm.
Yeah, he was speaking English, but a different form of English.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I'm like, "Oh, he sounds fabulous."
Yeah, that Southern
Mhm.
draw. I love it.
Yep.
So I just have like a question though, just like hearing your story because Caitlin's heard a little bit of it. So I'm kind of with our listeners, like hearing it for the first time, and just the power of you, like feeling like when you look back in hindsight, all these little nuggets that kind of led you up. And I was just very struck by you holding that baby that you were babysitting and thinking about
Mhm.
the birth mom. I don't feel like for a teenager that would be something, especially I think people outside of the adoption community
Yeah.
understand that there's like this stigma around birth moms, and to think of
Oh,
them
yeah.
in such a loving way or like a, wow, she must feel so sad right now. Like to me, that's like mind blowing that you would,
Mhm.
that was like placed in your heart in that moment. And so was there like a, I feel like we've heard that with this with some of the other birth moms that we know and are close to of like,
Mhm.
was there that moment of walking around your college campus now and feeling like, did you relate to that title of birth mom? Was it totally
Yeah.
different than what you expected it to be? Or did it feel like this, like, foreign thing that's, like, you didn't connect with like,
You
title
know,
and stigma of it, you know what I mean?
I don't think I connected with it. Um, wow, that's a really loaded question. I love it. I love the loaded questions. Um, I don't I don't think that we had those titles back then. I was just
Mm.
a girl who had placed for adoption.
Okay, yeah.
I don't yes, you're right. The title of birth mom wouldn't have really come out until a few years later. But I didn't fit in anywhere.
Mhm.
Um, and so even culturally, my daughter is biracial. And so I really struggled with where do I fit in? Who am I as a person? Who am I as a woman? And so I don't think I embraced the the title birth mom and the respect that goes with that until a couple years later.
Yeah.
And that was brought on because of my relationship with the adoptive mom.
Mm.
I think it was her words that spoke into me, that made me appreciate this is an okay title to have, and you can be proud of it.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that leads me to a question because Brave Love and Funding Love both are post placement, right? We want to
Yeah.
support birth moms
Mhm.
post placement. So hearing you say that you didn't really connect with that, or even kind of recognize it, or be aware of the role that you played, it as
Yeah.
was it something you just pushed aside and didn't think about, didn't talk about, and didn't know another birth mom, didn't have, so like where is your support during that post placement, and when did you find that in your journey?
Yes. So, again, I'm very unique where I went to this maternity home,
Yeah.
and so I know a ton of birth moms.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I love to hear it.
So, it was like, oh, we used to actually go over to my caseworker's house every Wednesday night to watch 90210. It was like our little support
Yes.
group back in the '90s. So, it was almost like a secret club.
Yeah.
Mm.
And so we would see each other on campus and just kinda, like, give each other the eyes, like, "How are you doing?" kinda thing. Um, but it was I mean, my support really and I don't even know the way to describe it. I thrived off of my letters and pictures I got from the adoptive parents,
Mm.
and so they turned into my support system. I have an amazing older sister as well, and so, the support that I got from her of, like, my parents didn't know how to help me because now their daughter has gone through this weird experience and made them grandparents, but are they really grandparents? Like
Right.
so many unknowns. And yeah, so my support, it's kind of changed through the years as I've embraced the different roles.
Yeah.
And and now again looking back in hindsight, I'm like, wow, it was just a crazy time of life, all the different eras that I've gone through to the place where I am now and who my supports have been through the years and where I've gotten that, from through the years.
Yeah. And knowing, a little bit about your professional experience is all of the pieces of the adoption triad, let's use that term, you've served
Yeah.
along your experience because I feel like this has been your life.
It has been.
Yeah. So like from when you placed to your first job and to your next job. So speak a little bit about how you've served the adoption community and all of those different impactful ways. And then we'll get to BraveLove because I want to talk about BraveLove.
Okay, perfect. It has been such a journey where I kind of just left the doors open for what do I want to do for a career?
Yeah.
I have a baby at 17 and then I go off to college and I'm like, what am I supposed to do? But I stayed very, very connected with the director of the adoption agency. And so while I was in college, she had me talking to birth moms or expecting moms. She had me speaking to adoptive couples just to give a voice to what is a birth mom.
Yeah.
And so that really gave me that platform to say, oh, my story does have value. And so as I launched into my career, I went right back to the adoption agency that I had used for the placement of my daughter. And so worked there as a caseworker for, I don't know, 11, 12 years. It's just a big blur now.
Wow.
But what an honor it was for me to be able to work alongside birth parents and say, if this is what you want to do, let's navigate this together. To go to the hospitals with them and say, hopefully this is the hardest. This is so hard to navigate. And to be able to sit there and say, I do understand. So I did that for a good chunk of my career. And then I went on to be the director of the maternity home that I had lived in during my pregnancy.
Wow.
Such a unique and fun experience.
Yeah.
And I am a big believer that, even though I have my own adoption experience, adoption isn't for everyone. And so to be able to walk into that role and help young women who want to make a solid parenting plan or want to pursue an adoption plan, it was just such an honor to be with them in that stage of life. And then from there, I went on to an organization that helped older young adults, so 17 to 21-year-olds that are receiving services through foster care. And I oversaw independent living programs. And so that opened me up to the foster care system and a whole different population that I had been exposed to before. So it has been such a journey that brought me to BraveLove. And I had been introduced to BraveLove right like soon after they launched, which is amazing. At the time I was working as an adoption case manager and heard about this organization to support birth mothers. And I was like, what do they know? Like, what are they gonna do? And oh my goodness, I'm so glad I followed because like they're doing it.
Yeah.
I went to a conference, it was probably a year after they launched and walked by this booth and saw this BraveLove banner and all these cool t-shirts out. And I was like, oh my goodness, that's Laura from BraveLove.
Yeah.
And so I went over and introduced myself. And for whatever bizarre reason, I took out my flip phone. I'm like, let's take a picture together. And so I have a picture with Laura, the now she's co-founder of BraveLove. And she does not age at all. I do.
Yeah.
I had like bright red hair and bangs. But there's a picture of us together, and I just fell in love with what BraveLove was determined to do. I wrote a few times for their website. I've hosted birth mom dinners. And so when I saw that they were hiring for executive director position, I was like, what an honor. what an honor it would be to be part of that team.
Yeah.
So,
I love
and
that.
that's where I am today.
Well, I just got to say two things. Don't you love our human nature, like our skepticism? Like, what do they know? Like, don't you love that? Like, that's our response. Like,
I know.
yeah, who are they?
Well, and I'll be transparent. That was like mine and Caitlin's fear in launching our birth mom
Right.
program was like, well, what do we know?
What do two adoptive moms know?
What do
My
we think?
goodness. Yeah. Yeah, that's so funny. And then I love how you took your story of the maternity home with the joys and the sadnesses, all of that it brought there, and you poured back into it for years. Like you said, okay, this was a part of my story that changed me, that made me, and how can I make that better? How can we continue to improve? And I think that's awesome, Janelle, that you didn't let it like scare you away because it's a
Right.
part of your story that isn't often celebrated, a part of your life that
Right.
isn't often celebrated, but you went back and you said, this is what I'm going to pour myself into. So I love that. I think that's great.
Great.
And it speaks volumes about you as a leader, you as an individual. So tell us about BraveLove, though. Tell us, now you're here, you're the executive director of BraveLove. Tell us, what is the mission and how do you guys fulfill that mission? What do y'all do?
To join BraveLove is just such an honor.
Yeah.
Such an honor. And I guess one of the things that I was not expecting or didn't grasp was the amount of stories and connections that we have with birth moms. Um, and it's like every story that I hear, every woman that reaches out, it's like I just hold her story. It's just so precious. Um, so basically, we are here to equip professionals. We want to really share what does modern adoption look like today, because everyone has, watched those Lifetime movies or heard a story from their aunts, brothers, cousins who, this went horribly wrong. And so we really want to equip professionals because just like that OBGYN who made those positive comments, I want some other expecting mom to have that same experience. We want to educate the public. We just want to, say, hey, this is what adoption looks like, whether you're looking to adopt and grow your family that way, or whether your neighbor is, their daughter is going through an unplanned pregnancy. How can you help them as she's navigating this? And then we do that also through storytelling. Please go to our website and watch our videos. We are getting ready to launch a whole new set of our Why Adoption series. I was just watching some of the videos before we jumped on this call, and I was like, okay, I got to make sure I don't have tears in my eyes. But the stories that we are able to share, and adoption isn't about rainbows and unicorns. And I'm so thankful for the bravery of these women that can sit there and share and say there's many highs and many lows. And doing that on our videos is just, I just love that's my favorite. That's my favorite.
Yeah.
And then we want to create a supportive community for birth moms to be able to come together. We have twice a year we host birth mother dinners that are all across the country and now even into Canada. I'm super excited about that.
That's amazing.
We're birth moms. It's hosted by birth moms, and birth moms can come and just sit at a table and just be present. And if they want to talk about adoption, great. And if they don't, that's okay too. So we have lots of things on our to-do list, and we are just tackling them one at a time. And our ultimate goal is just to change the negative stigmas that sometimes accompany adoption, and specifically birth moms.
Yeah. Talk about the power of that, because what you said, these dinners are, that's what I see in the birth mom space. All the birth moms that we interact with at Funding Love. I've been to a BraveLove dinner. I met this birth mom at a BraveLove dinner. That's a lot of what brings them together. But talk about the power of just being in the room with other birth moms that don't even need to talk about their stories, but just being around. Tell us from your experience as a birth mom, how impactful that is and why that matters. Just being understood and known and felt,
Oh yeah. It's a unique community of women who are, and I'm just going to steal, brave and loving. And some of us are lost and hurt, and some of us are having really joyful times of life, and some of us are very lonely. It's just a time to come together, and we don't even have to talk. It's just, we just understand and we get it. And so often, for example, when I went to college and I sat around, in the cafeteria and was sitting with all of my peers, probably no one in that whole cafeteria understood what I was going
Yeah.
through. And yet I found myself with the Brave Love dinners sitting around a table of 10 to 12 other women who, they get it. They understand. They've gone through those awkward conversations and they've gone through the highs and the lows. Um, Man, I hosted a dinner a few years ago and sat at a table where there was a woman who placed, I think it was back in 1969, and her story is gonna be released here in a few weeks. I mean, she's just an incredible woman. And then at the other end of the table was a woman who had placed a few months ago.
Mm.
And it was just like the power
Yeah, that's like
sitting
chilling
and
to
the
me. Yeah.
stories sitting at that table and just being able to say thank you so much to that woman who placed back in the 60s and 70s, who was brave enough to share her story so things could change in adoption. And then look at the other end of the table and say, we've got you. We've got your back, and this is gonna be hard, but you have community here.
Yeah. I mean, gosh, the courage of that young birth mom to come, that takes
And
a
she
lot,
drove
I feel
3
like.
hours.
Yeah.
3 hours to get there. Yep.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. I mean, there's
Amazing.
just women being in a room together can do something great, but
Right.
birth moms in a room together to say, let's just let's be a sisterhood, I guess, is
Yeah.
another term for
Yeah.
it. But yeah.
And it's cool even hearing your story again, like going back and making those little connections of you understanding why birth mom dinners work, because you had your birth mom 90210 nights where it was like,
Right?
we can just veg out
Right?
and watch
Right.
90210, or we can like say, this was
Exactly.
a rough week, guys. Like, I need support or I want encouragement.
Yeah.
Like, so you had already kind of experienced that in your own way, like
Mhm.
in an organic way. And then to see you now growing that and helping to be a part of that being an option for other women as well. It's just incredible. Your story is
Absolutely.
really, really cool to see all the ways that
Aw.
that your story has weaved together in hindsight to bring you where you are today.
Yeah.
And it's just really
Yeah,
cool.
and the best news is the story's not over yet. So
Right.
that's what I love about birth moms, like, it's not over.
Yeah.
So my goal is really that as I share my story, as I give a platform, and as Brave Love gives a platform for other birth moms to share, like, it just keeps growing and making a larger impact.
Yeah. Yeah. And y'all are crushing it with the storytelling. Like Mal and I talk about it a lot. And we've talked about it in the past of like, we got to take a few notes from that Brave Love page because you really are. Cause let's talk, you guys just released like a movie, right? Like last year, Emma, is that what it's called? Emma.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love it. I love that.
So you guys are not only doing these really, because even on your Instagram, even on Instagram, your reels, those are powerful.
Yeah.
And then you go to your website and then to release like let's just call it motion picture, or a movie, like that is so great. And I think that is how we're going to, let's call it the adoption world, we're going to change those stigmas, how we're going to educate is through this media way, because this is what people are doing, watching, looking at. So kudos to you guys. And that's amazing. And so, I mean, I love that we are different organizations doing different things, but our missions are so intertwined and we have the same goal in mind, our same mission. We're still focused on that same thing, is that we have our adoptive program, but let's talk about our birth mom program, is that these women are worthy of love, of joy, of experiencing really great things. They're worthy of being around a table, at any table, having a voice, being elevated. And that is what we're all trying to do. So I'm excited to see how like Brave Love and Funding Love love, do a lot of loving,
Right.
but how we continue to partner and just really make an impact in this community, because I feel like we can, and I feel like we should, and that is that excites me. But I mean, you guys are doing awesome things, so well done, and keep
you guys
going.
are too. Like, I can't wait to see how you guys continue to grow and make an impact. And
Yeah.
it's refreshing to see how the narrative is changing, and that
Mhm.
birth moms are part of that narrative now.
Yes.
Yeah, so thank you for everything that you guys are doing.
Hey, it's fun, and I shared with you, and this is when this launches, our our, I guess, registration would have opened for our birth mom reunion, our very first birth mom reunion, because we've sent 50 women, 50 birth moms to Disney. So now this is year 5 of our birth mom program. So Mal and I were like, how can we celebrate that in a little bit of a different way? And I think it's going to be so cool to see all these women come back and continue to support each other. And so, yeah, registration's open for that. So any Funding Love birth moms who are listening, know that that's open if y'all. So that's exciting. That's something new that we're doing. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait to see how that goes. Yeah, I've been talking to a few birth moms about it.
Yay!
Like, okay, you gotta give me the scoop. You gotta tell me all about it.
Yeah. You got it.
Yeah, we're excited to kind of fold that into the rhythm, because we do want the programs that we have and the women that we serve to not feel like we just like, oh, sent you to Disney. If you go, like, we do want to keep engaging and give them opportunities to come back together and continue that community, you know. So we're excited. Can't wait to see how far it goes.
Yeah. Hey, so Janelle, this has been such a great conversation, and I know it will be impactful for those watching and listening, inside and outside the adoption community, which is always what we're all trying to do. But one final question, because this is the Funding Love podcast, we like to have a fun question in there. What are you loving in life right now? Could be a movie, a show, a something, anything.
I am loving being an empty nester.
Hey,
that I can't pass that one up. Yeah. So my son is 25, my daughter is 21 and at college. And if I don't want to do the laundry or the dishes, or I don't have to, if I want to watch, something on Hallmark, I can. So I am loving being an empty nester.
Hey, you know what? That's encouraging to hear, because as I have 2 littles at home, and you watch the days go by and you get sad every day. It's like this parenting's this brutal game of, like, wanting them to grow up being sad that they're growing up. It's not cool. But I love to know that you're celebrating in that season too.
Yeah.
It brings me some hope and joy.
Yeah. My kids are teenagers, and I'm already like, oh my gosh, the time is it's slipping away. But it's good to know that, once you get there, it's exciting to be on the other side too.
Hey, yeah.
And grandparent too. Like, that's exciting.
Right? Right?
So great.
Let him come here, sugar him up, and send him home. I am all about it.
See, now you're in that mode. See, now you've left that mode of having littles, because right now that you're like, no sugar. That's so great. Hey, Mal, I'm going to ask you that question too, because we haven't done this in a while. What are you loving right now?
Oh man, that's I am loving. Well, if I'm being honest, like right now, my brain is in Funding Love mode, so I'm loving that our adoptive family trip is coming up.
Oh,
so by the time this airs, we'll have
be on the vacation
family and adoptees in Disney Park. So I am really excited about this group that we have going. I think these families are incredible. Their stories are incredible. We've got amazing magic makers that have been paired. It seems like a little
perfectly
clandestinely, to help. Even with some of the children that have special needs. So I am so excited. I'm loving Funding Love. That's what I'm loving.
Yeah. Hey, I love Funding Love and BraveLove.
What about you, Kate? Come on, throw us a little something.
Oh, what about me? I really I think my kids are so cool, and I love them. I just think you look at your kids and everyone thinks their kids are the coolest, but I'm like, gosh, my kids are so cool. Like they're so cool.
They really are.
Yeah, they're just like.
And now I feel bad. I'm like, oh, nothing, and you're loving your kid. Great.
Well, no.
The opposites of motherhood.
Seasons.
It's okay.
Seasons of motherhood. Yeah. No, it's no, I do it. It's just cool. You're just like, wow, like, I get to be with them. Like, that just kind of baffles my mind. I'm like, wow, they're wacko, but they're so cool, in their own way.
Fun stages.
Yeah. So that's That's what I'm loving. But Janelle, thank you again. This has been so fun.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we'll continue this conversation. Brave Love, Funding Love. We're going to do some cool things. So
yes, we are.
Awesome.
You're ready.
I'm ready too. And thank you to all the listeners and viewers for tuning into this episode of the Funding Love Adoption Podcast. We'll see y'all real soon.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the Funding Love podcast. Funding Love is a crowd-funded nonprofit, which means that people like you can help make a lasting impact in the lives of adoptive families and birth moms. Visit our website at fundinglove.com today to give, visit our swag shop, or purchase tickets to our upcoming fundraising gala, A Night of Dreams. When you partner with us, you are funding love.